Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cheyenne's Forum, and today is December 10th. Here is our dear friend, Tom. Tom, so nice to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming to our broadcast. And before we start, I'd like to introduce Tom. He worked in FBI for almost 30 years. And for 5 years, he was the assistant director of FBI. And right now, he's retired. Thank you again, Tom, to joining us. And we have, again, so many questions, like every time, to ask you. There's so many cases during this week. First thing is Biden pardoned his son. Surprise and not surprise. But the thing is, people are talking about how can he just pardon his son while he's keep telling people that he will not pardon Hunter. The other thing is Liz Cheney. She actually came out and say something about the J6 committee, and people are talking about that. They are actually asking Biden to pardon the J6 committee because they know what they were doing. So my question is that possible, or can Biden do that?
Well, it's an interesting topic. Excuse me. You know, if Biden issues a pardon to everybody in his administration, including himself, including his family, that lied, cheated, or
Right.
stole, or made money, or did illegal things in the
Mhm.
last several years,
Uh-huh.
he'll have a list of 100 people minimum.
Yeah.
So I think that's the tragedy of all this is that all of these people that knew they were doing wrong in the last couple of years,
Hmm.
and you can just go down the list by topic, all
Hmm.
of a sudden now the rumor is he should pardon them. One of the things about issuing a pardon is the person being pardoned has to admit that they were guilty,
Right.
that they
That's
did the wrong thing.
right, right,
So
right.
that means, you start with his own family.
Hmm.
Hunter Biden, well, it's pretty clear, how guilty he's been, so that's not so hard to go
Hmm.
ahead. But
Hmm.
Biden, as far as public officials or politicians or presidents go, probably he is the most prolific liar we've ever had at that level. He has told I mean, this goes back to campaigns when he was running for office 20, 30 years ago, making up stories about his advanced degrees and how well
Right.
he did in college and he graduated the highest anybody ever graduated. It was just, one lie after the other.
Mhm.
And it just continued all the way through. We told the lies about being on Amtrak, and he named a conductor that was a
I
friend of
remember.
his who had retired, 10 or 20 years earlier. So those were lies.
Mhm.
Um, just on and on. And then lately, he talked about go back, and, there's no coincidence to how long the pardon period is for Hunter Biden. Go
Yeah.
back 11 years, and
Hmm.
oh, that's just coincidentally the time that Hunter became a board member,
Hmm.
making $1 million a year for Burisma, one of the
Hmm.
most crooked companies in the world, in
Hmm.
one of the most crooked countries in the world, Ukraine, which still is a corrupt country. And, and at that time, Biden said he had no knowledge of what his son's business were. He didn't know his business associates. He didn't know where the money came from, that all these millions that were pouring into the family bank accounts.
Right.
And later, we find out all of that's a lie. He
Hmm.
knew all about it. He met his business associates. He had dinner with them.
Hmm.
He was well aware of what they were doing and how much money, the emails in the laptop, how much money was going to the big guy, which was him. And so, so there's no surprise. He's been talking about for the last couple of years, oh, he's not going to pardon his son.
Right.
He has faith in the system or
Yeah.
whatever. And that's a lie. Now he
Mhm.
goes ahead and pardons him. And then on top of the pardon, it tells another lie, which is his son was singled out by the Justice Department. No, he wasn't singled out for prosecution. He was singled out for getting a pass. He was singled out for not being prosecuted on all the things he could have been. He
Right.
was singled out for favorable treatment,
Mhm.
not unfavorable treatment,
Exactly.
unlike Trump, who
Yep.
was singled out for nonstop lawfare, whether
Mhm.
it's from Letitia James, and Attorney General of New York, or Bragg, the prosecutor in New York,
Jackson.
or Fannie Willis, and you name it.
Hmm.
And they all went after him
Hmm.
unfairly, improperly. And, Trump had to endure that and overcome it. And
Hmm.
eventually the public didn't believe it, which is how he ended up being reelected, a couple months ago. But the idea that, Biden now lying that he had to do this for his son because he was singled out unfairly. Well, Biden's in charge of the Justice Department. If
Hmm.
there was somebody there unfairly, selectively, improperly, illegally prosecuting Hunter, fire him.
Hmm. Yep.
Biden was in a position he could fire the prosecutor, he could fire Merrick Garland, he
Hmm.
could take all of these actions, which
Right.
would indicate there was wrongdoing in the Justice Department, and I'm taking action against the evildoers that
Hmm.
did that. No, he takes action for Hunter's benefit
Hmm.
and everybody else in the family. So I think, and now you have the rumors that Biden is contemplating go down the list of people that have done wrong, done terrible things in the last couple of years. If you want to go to the J6 committee, how
Hmm.
improperly conducted, and then they lose the evidence. Oh, the sworn statements that benefited Trump. Oh, gee, we can't find them. Or what happened? We don't understand. And
Hmm.
some of the biggest crooks in the Republican Party participate on behalf of the Democrats. Liz Cheney at the top of the list, who
Hmm.
then gets defeated for her bid to be reelected to Congress by the largest landslide of any congressional election in Wyoming.
Just
So
such a
that didn't work
loser.
out.
Hmm.
Then you have Adam Kinzinger from New York, from Illinois, another liar.
Hmm.
Uh, he voted twice to impeach Trump when he was a member of Congress. So
Hmm.
you have all of these people involved in that. Then they can't find the evidence, and then the committee itself, the J6 committee, was improper and unconstitutionally selected.
Hmm.
Excuse me. The Speaker of the House can create select committees, but there's rules that apply to that which they ignore. That
Hmm.
they have that the Republican Party would have the right to pick its representatives, and they had picked
Right.
Jim Jordan and a couple of others, and Liz Cheney and Kinzinger were put on there improperly by Pelosi. She just said, no, these are going to be on that. There are a couple of Republicans. Well, the typical rhino, Republicans in name only, that had voted to impeach Trump
Hmm.
previously.
Hmm.
So, what was happening there? It was a completely crooked committee. They
Hmm.
conducted completely improper hearings and take improper statements and then lose it,
Right.
destroy the evidence or lose it, or we can't find the password, all of these shenanigans that they typically do, and they did in that case.
Hmm.
So I think that, so now the rumor is that he's going to have to pardon Liz Cheney and Kinzinger and every member of the committee that did terrible things. They
Hmm.
need to be pardoned because they could be prosecuted.
Right. But
So
but the thing is, he can't because they are not being prosecuted yet. So they're
that's
innocent.
I mean, that's true. And he's not president yet, so he can't pardon any. I mean, Biden could pardon them. Sorry, thinking of Trump, because Trump had talked previously that he might Hunter Biden and some of the others just to get it done and get back to it being on an equal footing. But the fact that that still is unknown because it's not been properly challenged. For example,
Mhm.
the last time you had a president pardon somebody for acts that they hadn't even been charged with was Gerald Ford pardoning Richard Nixon after Watergate.
Mhm.
And you remember Ford in his speech to the American people, I remember him saying vividly, "Our long national nightmare is over. I'm pardoning Richard Nixon." He created a situation which extended our long national nightmare all the way to today because he pardons Nixon. Nixon hadn't been charged officially.
right,
Nixon hadn't been found guilty officially, any of that. But he's
right,
basically says, okay, anything that now that we know or might find out in the future of Nixon's wrongdoing regarding Watergate in particular, I'm pardoning him now. So he has a blanket pardon. And then now you have Biden doing that with Hunter Biden. He still hasn't said what he's going to do with his brother, other
right.
family members,
Hmm.
um, and then other Democrats. You're talking about Fauci, for example, the
Right,
lies he
exactly.
told,
Right.
the improper money he received from
Hmm.
companies from China,
Hmm.
sending money to China and then lying about it. He lied under oath to Congress
Right,
many a time. And
right.
many of the crimes of Fauci have been well documented and identified,
Hmm.
particularly by Rand Paul from Kentucky,
Right, right, right,
who said
right,
over and over that the things Fauci did, sending money to the lab in China to
right.
increase gain of function, making the virus more deadly,
Hmm.
things like that. Fauci made a fortune. He was getting money, and his cronies were getting money from big pharma,
Right.
and he was already getting practically $500,000 a year in salary and benefits to begin with.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you have Fauci just being a complete crook as far as people say. Now
Right.
I'm not clairvoyant, but I remember my wife and I watching an early press conference with Fauci speaking up. I
Hmm.
said right on the spot, my instincts, watching his body language, what he was saying, how he was saying, I
Right.
said he's lying, he's a crook, and he should go to jail.
Yeah.
And that when all the dust settles, they'll
Right.
find that he should have been charged.
Right.
Now we're still waiting for the dust to settle because he's been protected. But
Well, well,
and then now what they're saying is if Trump goes after any of these people, that's improper. That's retribution. He's going to go after, well, I think many of us would say that's not retribution, it's justice.
hmm. Hmm. Well, Tom, I really like to shake hands with you if I could. Because you mentioned about the press conference at the early stage of the pandemic, which is early 2020,
Right,
that President Trump come out every day to do the press conference. And I was looking very closely to the conference, and I didn't know Fossey before that conference. So when he come out and say something, about 10 minutes, I just say to my family members, I just said, you know what? I don't trust him. I don't know why. I think he's a better politician than a scientist. So this
well,
is
the
my first
statements, even
experience
some of
with
the
him.
statements he made that were so egotistical. I
Right,
am science.
right,
You remember that statement?
right, right,
You're not
right.
science. You're a bureaucrat making a fortune
Yeah.
over lying,
Mhm.
lying about the money that you authorized to get sent to China to make the virus more deadly.
Right.
You're not scientist. You're an evil scientist.
No. Yeah, and also one question that I'd like to discuss with you is about the fortune he got. I know that people work in federal government. You have to release their financial situation every year. So if he made a lot of money, all of a sudden, people will know. The government will know. So what happened? They saw it, they don't care, or he just did not tell the
I
government.
think I think the mood of the country at the time, people thought he was a saint. Oh, Fauci is going to save our country. Fauci is saving our lives. Oh, he's wonderful. And I think there was no mood for anybody to look into the fact that he was making, $500,000 a year.
Hmm.
Most government bureaucrats don't make anywhere close to that. Now,
No.
one of the things a lot of people don't realize, we have a government pay scale called the GS schedule.
Hmm.
And people get hired into the government, whether they're a GS3 or a GS5. Like in
Hmm.
the FBI, an agent starts at GS10 and then works up and can end up
Hmm.
maybe like I ended up in the senior executive service my last 11 years.
Hmm.
But those levels of pay for all of the bureaus and departments are right, they're limited. They're set how high those limits go.
Yeah,
The
right.
exception to that, and I was involved in inspection of the Veterans Administration,
Right.
are key specialist positions where they can be exempted from the GS scale.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they can't get specialists. So, for example, guys like Fauci, if they're deemed a scientist and they know so much and they're so important, they can be exempted from that and get a lot more money. If you're a doctor working for the Veterans Administration, for example, an anesthesiologist has to pay $1 million a year for insurance, malpractice insurance in New York, but so therefore VA doctors have to make that much and get exempted from the prosecutions and stuff. So they can make a lot more money just depending on the department, depending on the specialty,
I see.
where they work and how they are. And apparently Fauci fell into some category like that, that he's so special, he's so important, he's so knowledgeable, he's such an expert that he's going to make all this extra money that mostly, would not be possible.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you
And then
so
his
much.
pension is enormous. His
Mm,
wife's pension is enormous.
right, right.
And then now, in his 80s,
Hmm.
who's going to prosecute him? Because to put a case together, that may take a long time and it may not happen. And then again, the Democrats line this up to look like it's vindictive. If anybody goes after him from the Trump Department of Justice, it's for revenge. It's for, to punish him. It's improper. And, so one person's vindictive prosecution is another person's justice, holding people accountable. And that's what's lacking in so many ways in the federal government. Who gets held accountable?
Right, right. Well, the law is the law, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are.
Should be, should
Yeah,
be.
right. And also, thank you so much for mentioning that Ford actually pardoned Nixon. So, is this the only example that the president pardoned someone's not commit crime yet? Is that the only example? Since we have the pardon system.
I think so, but I'm not positive.
Okay. So,
But in
but it,
this case,
we're
in this case, it's such a high profile because Nixon had been president,
right.
and all of the political machinations that went on around the deal to get Nixon to resign the presidency had to do with they
Mhm.
had to find somebody that was going to pardon him.
Right,
So
right.
Gerald Ford, and you remember Gerald Ford didn't get reelected. So the public did not appreciate
Hmm.
what he did and how they did it, everything about that.
Hmm. He's a Republican, right?
Yeah,
Ford. All
Ford
right.
was a Republican, Nixon was a Republican. And
Mm-hmm.
interesting, when the Watergate investigation was going on
Mm-hmm.
before Nixon resigns, the leader of the Republican Party was Barry Goldwater, senator from Arizona. And
Mm-hmm.
Goldwater had run for the presidency earlier, lost to Lyndon Johnson in 1964, but he
Mm-hmm.
was still more or less the leader of the party.
Mm-hmm.
And Ford led a delegation of senators to the White House
Mm-hmm.
and told Nixon, if you don't resign, we're going to impeach you. So we,
Right.
Republicans, fellow Republicans, are going
Mm-hmm.
to bring impeachment charges against you.
Right.
And, it's not going to go well for you if we do. And so
Mm-hmm.
then Nixon resigns.
Yeah, right. So Ford is,
And he resigns, and then now what? Are they going to prosecute him? Are they going to use all the evidence against him? And that's when Ford, uh, considered one of the weaker senators, he makes a deal with the majority, like Goldwater and the others, that they'll appoint him as president, basically,
mm-hmm.
and then he'll pardon Nixon the way they want to. And the public didn't like it. They felt that justice had been cheated. At least Nixon should have been at least tried
Right.
in court and
Right.
had a chance to explain his side of it, or see if he's innocent. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, he pardons him. And like
Right.
I said, he gives this emotional, our long national nightmare is over.
Mm-hmm.
And I maintain it only just begun because of not holding Nixon accountable. He established a precedent that if a president's involved in wrongdoing, well, that's okay. He's the president. Now, the only time they went against that was going after Trump twice
Mm-hmm.
with impeachments that were ridiculous.
Right.
But at the time, that was what they were trying to do, give Nixon a break.
Well, it's a great lesson to every single one of us, American people, that the law is the law. If you don't follow the law, and the tragedy will come. So that's the example, perfect example of that. Well, thank you so much. Because I actually check on the Constitution about the pardon part, and I read word by word. That means you can pardon someone that commit a crime. That means if someone is not commit a crime, that you cannot pardon him or her. So then I think, okay, Liz Cheney, you have no chance to be pardoned by Joe Biden. But it seems like there are some, like Ford can pardon Nixon. Not a good example at all.
Now, the question is going to become, what will the Supreme Court do? Because the Constitution is vague about when you can pardon or some of the details of it. And
Uh-huh.
what most presidents do, just by habit, is they issue the pardons at the end of their term.
Hmm.
So in this case, it would be Joe Biden pardoning everybody he wants to pardon on January 19th, the day before the inauguration of Trump.
Hmm.
Now, in this case, he had to do it with Hunter early because Hunter was going to be sentenced and he was trying to defeat that. But Hunter had already been found guilty.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
you
that
don't
makes
have
sense.
that issue. But if,
Hmm.
if he tries to issue preemptive pardons
Hmm.
against his brother and his
Hmm.
family members and other members of the people that were involved in Hunter's schemes,
Right.
and of course the January 6th committee itself,
Hmm.
then that's a different story because they're not you don't have pending charges
Hmm.
and they haven't pled guilty to anything or been found guilty.
Right, right.
So just the idea that everybody knows they're crooks and no good,
Hmm.
is that good enough? Is that good enough for the Supreme Court to justify or uphold pardons issued by Biden?
So,
We'll
so,
see.
so
We will
Supreme
see.
Court. Okay, that's a good thing. The Supreme Court has authority to like hold his pardon.
Yeah.
We have another hope. So thank you so much. Now we're much clearer about this topic, pardon. This is a big issue, at least during last week.
Well,
So
we're not completely clear. And of course, Biden hasn't issued these preemptive
right.
pardons yet. Like I
Hmm.
said, Hunter was found guilty.
Right.
And there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to wait till the last minute to issue one.
Right.
So, it's kind of the discretion. The president has a lot of power. And
Hmm.
very often, in many of these cases, the person being pardoned is a crook. They
Hmm.
are admitted to have
Oh yeah.
stolen money or been involved in fraud or some other major federal crime. Now,
Hmm.
here's another interesting thing in this that a lot of people are not talking about. The president can pardon somebody that's involved. Let's say he gets away with this that they're suspects, but it's federal crimes that he's pardoning them on. He has no authority under state crimes.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
if they committed tax evasion, when they were taking in money, the Biden crime family taking in money from China, Romania, Moscow, and Ukraine, um, that was improper, that they were illegally taking in,
Hmm.
um, that's a whole different story
Right.
at the state level because yeah, federal income tax evasion, federal income tax. But
Mhm.
if they're obtaining money or obstructing justice or doing other things, those are usually state crimes as well.
Right.
And the president has no authority to pardon anybody for a state crime.
Hmm.
Now, if he had crony governors on his side, the governor could issue a pardon for possible state charges.
Hmm.
But I don't know how many governors would like to hitch their wagon politically to Joe Biden anymore.
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
think that from that standpoint, I don't know of any governor that's gonna do that.
Right. Well, that's a good point. Thank you, Tom. And so, our next topic is about the murder at New York City for the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. So what do you think about this case? We already catch someone, suspect. He's the killer. So what do you, as a former FBI agent and very experienced agent, what do you think about this case? Is it weird, very weird case, or this is just a normal case that you saw when you're working FBI.
Yeah, we had cases like this, but they don't usually involve the murder of somebody. You have this guy. Later, we're finding out that he had, all kinds of reasons to dislike the healthcare industry and
Mhm,
feel like he got mistreated and didn't get the treatment and backup that he should have gotten, and personally blamed the head of the company,
mhm,
and then decided now, people get mad at people who are heads of companies or head of government or their boss, workplace violence, that kind of thing. But they don't always take it that far. It takes a certain
threatening.
special degree of mental illness, whether
Right.
he's a sociopath or a psychopath or whatever,
Mhm,
to take revenge in his mind on this guy in the healthcare industry or head of the company that he felt mistreated him, that he didn't get the service that he deserved and should have gotten,
mhm.
and take it to the next level. Therefore, he's going to kill the head of the company.
Right, right, right. But this case is not as you describe the usual case. He's 26
Oh,
years.
it's not usual in that
Mhm.
most of these cases you don't have the person who thinks he's a victim commit murder against the head of the company. So
Right,
that's taking it to the next level.
right.
Um, so yeah,
So,
but it did not take the authorities long to figure out what
mhm,
the motive was, who was behind it, what kind of threats had been made up till that point.
right.
And then, then the facial recognition that you have an employee in McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania yesterday
Mhm.
say, "Hey, isn't that the guy that they're looking for murder in New York?"
Right,
And it goes from there.
right. So there's lots of unknown on this case. So it's pretty early stage of the investigation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just saw his pictures and his background stories, and it seems like he's a very good student, very smart kid, 26 years old, and then it's just so weird.
Well, interesting, supposedly one of his idols, and he's read all of the manifestos and manuscripts from Theodore Kaczynski. Now, Kaczynski was a brilliant, student and mathematician and
Yeah.
all of that. Becomes the Unabomber later, killing people, sending very intricate devices that he hand built and then
Mhm,
mailed to people that he wanted to kill. And
mhm.
so he kind of fits that mold of an extremely intelligent
Right,
mathematician, scientist,
right, right.
whatever,
Mhm.
that is also mentally ill, is also sociopath or psychopath,
Right,
um, like you have in this case, to commit these kind of crimes.
right, right. So, well, thank you for mentioning that. Exactly. He is a super intelligence. So,
So, yeah,
and it's
almost too
somebody,
much,
right.
almost too much for his own good. Yeah.
Cannot balance well. So, the other topic I think you might be very interesting about Christopher Wray. He is saying that he's going to resign because he does not want to get fired by Trump. So, first of all, do you really believe this saying that he probably going to just step down before Trump's get into the White House? That's question number one. Question two is even he's quit or resign, it still can we have some opportunity to investigate him if we find something that he have done wrongfully? Do we still
Yeah.
have a
Yeah. He
chance?
can be investigated. I think that, um, well, first of all, people have said, oh, he has a 10-year term and he's only year 7 or 8 of that 10-year term. Trump
Uh-huh,
can't fire him. That's
uh-huh,
not true. A president can fire the head of the FBI for cause
right.
if there's cause, for instance. So you have James Comey
Mm-hmm,
doing improper things and leaking sensitive documents and trying to build a case against Trump,
mm-hmm,
and Trump fired him. So Trump had cause to fire him and did it. Now the problem was that the former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, recommends to Trump, oh, you should hire Christopher Wray.
Mhm.
He was in the Justice Department. He was a great attorney, and his law firm defended Chris Christie in the Bridgegate. You remember where they were accused of improperly
Mhm.
closing the bridges between New Jersey and Manhattan,
Mhm.
and um, and Trump, again, not knowing anything. And Christopher Wray had the titles. He had been head of the criminal division of the Department of Justice.
Mhm.
Same job that Robert Mueller had that job, Comey had that job.
Mhm.
Go back 3 or 4 prior executives had that job. So
Mhm.
it's one of the key jobs at the Department of Justice. And so the fact that he had that job and there were no complaints at the time about it,
Mhm.
he was qualified.
Mhm.
But, later, the things that he does as director, and I'll just go to the simplest thing.
Mhm.
So anybody that says Trump shouldn't fire him or Biden shouldn't fire him, the simplest thing is the number of times they can prove he lied
Mhm.
under oath to Congress.
Yep.
Even I saw that over and over and over and commented about it on this podcast and other podcasts that I was on and saying he's lying.
Mhm.
Any number of topics, he lied.
Right.
And and I think that for that reason alone, and for another reason, in the FBI, I was an inspector. I think I've talked about that before.
Mhm.
One of the topics that comes up, every one of the 56 field divisions,
Mhm.
every one of the overseas attaches, which I was in charge of my last 5 years,
Mhm.
now 80 of them outside the United States, every one of them gets inspected every 3 years. This is separate from an allegation is made or
Right.
some reason to investigate comes up. This
Uh-huh.
is routine, every one. And what happens, they're career threatening. When we and the inspection team, as an inspector, the assistants that went with me, we went to a field division and spent either 2 or 3 weeks investigating all the cases they had, how they were conducting their investigations, all of the other issues, compliance with the rules and regulations and the law and all of that. And in that situation, even if nobody really did anything wrong, the boss of the office was evaluated for reputation in the community. So you would interview all
I
of the judges, federal, state, and local,
Sure,
all
sure.
of the law enforcement officials, the other federal agencies,
Mhm.
and police agencies in
Sure.
that state jurisdiction. And so what would happen is if the inspectors found that leader, the special agent in charge or assistant in charge, had brought a bad reputation on the FBI, or the investigations were not efficient or effective, or there was wrongdoing and lack of leadership. Any one of these topics, that person and the persons under that person could be fired, or they could be transferred, or they could be disciplined. It was career threatening. So when an inspector went to a division, whether it's on an internal investigation or a routine inspection,
Mhm.
it was career threatening to the bosses.
Right.
If wrongdoing or inefficiencies were found, or if the community didn't respect that person, that would be it. That
Mhm.
person would be removed from the office. So
Mhm.
with regard to the director, Christopher Wray, he comes into the FBI, and I think at the time it had 60 or 70% approval rating in the public. Well,
Mhm.
now the public, I think that rating is 30, 40%.
Yeah, right.
And
Uh-huh.
much of the public is saying he should be removed. He
Mm-hmm.
should be taken
Right.
out. He's ineffective. He's inefficient. He's lying. You name it, the issues that have come up. And that alone is reason enough to take Christopher Wray out. The reputation nationally of the FBI has been so damaged under
Right.
his lack of leadership
Right.
that's enough reason. His,
Wow.
his ineffectiveness as a leader. Now, what's interesting, I still travel all over the world. I've been to over 100 different countries in the Bureau, and then since doing that, consulting and other uh,
Mhm.
work. And the rest of the world still regards the FBI as the number one agency, law enforcement agency in the world. I
Still has
go
the
into
highest
countries, and when they
reputation.
hear I was a senior executive of the FBI,
Mhm,
oh, that the amount of praise I receive and all of this. And I'm thinking to myself, it's not as deserved anymore. And colleagues of mine traveling within the United States tell me, and I
mhm.
hear this all the time on other podcasts and interviews, they don't even want, if somebody asks them, who'd you work for? They don't even want to admit they worked for the FBI because of
Really?
how bad the reputation has gotten. They're ashamed to say, yeah, I'm with the FBI, or I was with the FBI, or to put a caveat on it saying I was with the FBI when they were great. And too
That,
bad it's not right now. But
mhm,
once upon a time, we were regarded as the best in the world within the United States and all over the world.
yeah.
And so I personally hold Christopher Wray accountable for the downfall of the FBI's reputation. When you have members of the United States Congress advocating that maybe the FBI should be broken up, maybe it should be dismantled, maybe it should be defunded because of the lack of efficiency or all the other accusations against it, unfair investigations, and all the other allegations.
Mhm.
That's a horrible situation, I think.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for the very important information about like you have the check and balance within the FBI. Like you go to different branches and give them the like exam. We can call them exam every 3 years. This is such a great system. And this is why FBI, one of the reasons that FBI is the number one in the world. And in China, we have said that you build a building for you have to spend maybe 10 years to build a building, but you just have 1 day to destroy the building.
Yeah.
This thing is so easier than the build, but we will rebuild the FBI. We definitely will do that. So for the new leadership, if Kash Patel uh, can get into the FBI, become the director of FBI, how confident you are to him that he can rebuild the FBI for the reputation and for
I'm
its.
very confident because he
Mhm,
knows what the problems are and what the FBI has been doing and doing wrong over
mhm,
the last couple of years. And he
mhm,
has the experience. He
mhm,
was a yeah, Democrats say he's not qualified. That's absurd.
mhm,
He prosecuted 60 or more cases personally in federal court that were
right,
violations of federal law. He's very familiar with that. He was,
mhm,
an assistant to the committee that Devin Nunes was running in Congress. So he wrote the memos on Russiagate and the
mhm,
phony investigations that
mhm,
were started by the FBI, by Hillary Clinton
right,
giving false information to the Bureau that they knew was false, but they didn't like Trump, so they went ahead and did it.
right, right.
And I think that he's well aware of the minute details of those investigations
Mhm,
and the bad FBI agents that conducted them, that allowed that to happen. And it's
mhm,
not that many, but it doesn't take many.
mhm,
And the investigations that the FBI conducts can be so sensitive
mhm,
that to miscarry justice, let's say, can do tremendous damage, and it has done
mhm,
tremendous damage. So then you have Kash Patel having experience working at the Defense Department,
mhm,
um, for the Secretary of Defense. So you have him operating in the judiciary, in the judicial branch
mhm,
at DOJ
mhm.
and in Congress and in the military at the Pentagon. So that's why there are so many people coming out. He's not qualified.
Right.
They
They
don't
are
want
just
him. They're
scared to
scared to
think.
death of him.
Right, right. So yeah, I'm just curious. What do you think about the time it will take for Cash go to FBI to be the director to do some reform the FBI things? So you think 3 or 4 years is enough to rebuild the reputation of FBI?
Yeah, I think it's enough
Oh,
because he's not starting from scratch. He wasn't the dog catcher in some small town in Idaho.
uh-huh.
He's been in the federal government. He's been in Congress. He's been in the judicial branch. He's been in
Right,
the
right.
military.
Uh-huh.
Um, has all of that background and inside knowledge, and especially the Russia gate. Everything that went on in that Russia false investigation of Trump, false accusations engineered by Hillary Clinton and
Mm-hmm.
members of the FBI to go after Trump, and all of the just improper investigation and allegations that they made.
Mm-hmm.
He's got way more. He's not just starting from scratch. He's been intimately involved in
Mm-hmm.
what's been going on with the FBI and to the FBI,
Right.
for a couple of years. So he has a great background. And I think that, for Trump to find him out of all of the really qualified people I'm very confident.
That's such a great news to us and give us lots of confidence to bring FBI back, to make FBI great again. And then so for the last question of today is about Syria. So do you want to share some your perspective on the situation in Syria?
I think that Syria right now is a ball of confusion. Um, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the experts that I've been, going to their YouTube channels or articles that they've written are really don't really know what's about to happen or what could happen with Syria.
Mm-hmm.
That the fall came and apparently nobody saw it coming. The United States didn't predict it. The Russians didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, this more or less terrorist group uh,
Yep.
deposes the head of the country, Bashar al-Assad. So we'll see where that's going to go. That's going to be a very interesting situation. I
Mm-hmm.
had traveled to Syria when I was running international operations. My division, we had offices there, and I spent some time in Damascus.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we knew that this could come someday, but had no idea that it was going to happen now and happen so quickly.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting that you've been there. When is that? The time that you've
I was
been.
still in the Bureau in 2000. I was still running international operations, probably about 2005, 2006, within a couple of years before I hit mandatory retirement. So
Sure.
I had a couple of trips there um, to Israel, to Syria,
Mm-hmm.
to Lebanon. So I
Uh-huh.
had been to many of these cities that we're talking about.
Right. So what is your impression of Syria at that time when you travel there? What do you think
Um,
about the country and why you said that you know that someday it will happen? Why make you think about that way?
because of you know, Bashar al-Assad was like most Middle East strongmen, like Saddam Hussein and others, brutal to his own people.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had enemies that involved terror groups, the descendants of Al Qaeda and a couple of other groups that they evolved from that. And I thought that, someday they're going to probably try to take him out. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just a question of how hard will Russia defend him? And not to mention, we had bases in Syria as well.
Right.
So so you have the Russians with a financial interest there. You have America with a financial interest,
Mm-hmm.
and and of course the terrorist groups
Mm-hmm.
wanted to overthrow him and basically take over. So to
Mm-hmm.
what extent they're going to take over, we'll see. And to what extent, how this will affect in the long run Israel, Iran,
Mm-hmm.
obviously Russia and the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost a let's wait and see. And I've listened to many of the experts, military experts
Mm-hmm.
today and yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and the ones I trust the most are basically saying, we don't know for sure what's going to happen.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw some like podcast and then some article and saying that people are thinking if CIA have something to do with it, or it's just kind of another Jasmine revolution that happened years ago in the Middle East, and also why Russia are so sad about Assad fall down. So how big is the Russian benefit are there, assets are there?
I think the Russians, they got caught by surprise. I think we got caught by surprise. And I think they just basically said, let's just fold our cards and get out of here and just leave it and see what happens to it.
Mhm,
But whether the CIA or to what extent CIA and MI6 have interfered and led this to happen, it could be because this terrorist group, Giuliani, has cut people's heads off personally. He's now, and now people are trying to say, well, he's not such a bad guy. He's better now. What do you mean
mhm,
he's better now? He uses a guillotine instead of a machete. What's better now? But again,
mhm,
we'll see what's going to be better or not better.
yeah.
So most of the countries that we've interfered with in the Middle East are worse off. Now,
Right.
I was the FBI commander in Iraq right after we invaded there.
Uh-huh.
And, where is Iraq today? We pretty much ruined that situation and got kicked out. And you look at some of these other countries, look at Libya.
Yeah,
We,
right.
we helped take out Gaddafi, and that's still
Yeah,
mass chaos and not a big help to us or anybody else right now. So
right.
you have a lot of issues in the Middle East, and I just feel like many of the leaders of the United States really don't get it.
Mhm,
Uh, it's like a bunch of amateurs trying to run it. And I'm not sure even our own CIA, working all very closely with MI6, the British intelligence service,
mhm.
um, to what extent they get it or benefit, I don't know. I think it's going to take a while to find out what actually happens.
Right, right. Just like President Trump said that just don't involve for the Syria
Yeah, I
situation.
think he's right because what he's basically saying is there's no really, he has no confidence in the experts, nor
Hmm.
do I.
Yeah.
So I don't want to sit here as an inspector, as a expert and
Mm-hmm.
say, well, here's what we should do there, and here's what happened, and here's how it happened. The experts aren't sure what happened,
Hmm.
and the experts aren't sure what the future holds based on this event for the U.S., for Russia, for Iran, for Israel,
Hmm.
what the ramifications are going to be. And I think that we'll find out.
Right,
But right now, I don't think it does anybody any good to guess.
right. Yeah. Well, while you're saying that, I'm just thinking about um, when you wonder if you really know something, that's the beginning of the wisdom. All right, let's see if we have some clients, the audience, sorry, have some questions regarding this issue. So for the serial situation, your advice is just wait and see, right? Just wait and see. We're not quite sure what happened there.
I think Trump has the right thing. Don't go stumbling into something,
Hmm.
stay out of it unless
Right,
something really happens that we have to get in.
right. Um,
And what will Israel do? Will Israel continue to lead the US by the nose and dictate what our foreign policy is going to be in the Middle East?
mhm. We'll
We'll
see.
see. We'll
We'll
see
see.
all of that.
Yeah. Well, oh, the audience, thank you so much, and said good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tom. And Newton Einstein did not dare to say that I am science. I think he's talking about falsy. He said even Newton or Einstein didn't even say that.
No,
This young man affiliate is pounding. Oh, I think he's talking about the guy, the suspect of the killer of the CEO. So
yeah,
this is a very, very beginning of the case, right? We don't know the motivation. We don't know. So we actually don't know nothing, right?
right. And
Okay.
then, and then so many things seem obvious. Are they too obvious? He's written papers. He's written, he's studied Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber,
Right.
who was anti, technology, let's say, and
Right.
all of that way back when. And I think that we just need to learn a lot more about this guy.
Right, right, right. And then also I have a personal question before we end of today's broadcast is about Daniel uh Penny's case yesterday. He's a
Right.
free man now. So everybody's happy. And of course, the killer's father is not happy, but that's another issue. So I'm thinking about the Florida case. The officer was in sentenced over 10, 20 years in prison. So this is a very similar case. Do you
Yeah.
think the officer can have some opportunity to sue his case and to do the trial
Well,
again?
yeah, what's interesting in that case and
Uh,
similar cases is the uh, the officer that had the restraint hold in that case, that didn't kill him. He died of fentanyl and other drugs in his system.
right,
But I think what's happened is that the racial overtones of these cases has gotten such that it's going to be really, really difficult for a white guy to get a fair trial if the victim was black.
right,
And that's the key thing in this particular case, the Penny case, is wow, the jury, even with blacks on the jury, found him innocent.
yeah,
And all of Elvin Bragg's machinations of drop the top charge that they were stuck on and say, okay, forget that one. Let's go with a lower charge
right,
that surely you can find
right.
him guilty on something, and
Mhm,
how far down he would have gone,
mhm,
would they have charged him with trespassing on the platform or something?
mhm,
Um, and I think that's the shame of what's going on in this country right now is that you have Black Lives Matter, like they've come out
mhm.
speaking publicly in
Yeah,
this case that there should be retribution against whites. That, if a black guy gets killed, that's it. The white guy's automatically guilty. And the shame of that is that was the very thing that they, complained about and protested against during the Jim Crow era in the United States,
mhm,
where if a black guy was the victim and a white guy was involved, he's guilty. That's it. And
yeah,
if a white guy was the victim and a black guy committed it, he should hang.
yeah,
And I think that automatically, don't even hear the evidence. We don't care anything else. All we
mhm,
have to know is what color skin did
yeah,
the victim have, or did the person that killed the victim? That's all
mhm,
we need to know. That
mhm,
tells you guilt, innocence, everything. And I think in this case, almost a return to, in spite of Alvin Bragg and his nonsense, a return to justice. Let's call it that. That
mhm,
this kid, he meant no harm other than, especially in the trial, 10 or 12 witnesses that were on that subway platform credited Penny with saving them,
yeah,
that they were going to get killed by this guy. He saved their lives. He's their hero. And
mhm,
some were black and some were white. He's their hero regardless.
right,
Forget what color they all are. The
mhm,
actions of the person that died was going to be kill whites, kill people on that platform. So
right,
I think it's a great step in the right direction.
mhm,
Now, what we need to have happen is Alvin Bragg
mhm.
uh, either resign or
He needs
quit or
to help.
something, but he's evil.
Yeah,
What he's done in this case and in the
mhm,
Trump case is evil. It's not just a difference of opinion or anything like that. I think it goes beyond that.
mhm, mhm. So is there any way or law against this guy? Can we sue him? Well, we're talking about he's resigned or he just stepped
Well,
down.
the
Can
problem the
we sue
problem
them?
is look at the population of New York City, and they keep voting these liberal Democrats in,
Hmm.
and no matter what they do, they let them get away with this stuff. So I think that that's gonna be a problem.
That's sad. That's very sad. So
It's very sad.
yeah. So for Penny's case, do you think Penny's case will give some hope for the Officer Chauvin's case? Can he just do retrial his case, or is there possibility for him?
I think it's possible, but whether they're going to do it, in Minnesota, in Minneapolis or not, I don't know. Because you already have, in the case of Chauvin, you already have the for the pathologist and others saying that the hold that he was using or leaning on his chest or whatever it was isn't what killed him.
Exactly.
It was the drugs in his system.
Right.
And it did again, it goes back to that Chauvin's white, the victim's black. That's it.
Yeah.
Guilty. Guilty is charged. And at some point, we just got to get away from that.
Wow. So,
We, as a country,
yeah.
have to get back to justice.
Yeah. So law and order. That's
Yeah,
the thing. That's what we need to do. That's what the Trump administration need to fight for. Even though
right.
he took back to the White House, the journey is just begin. We have a
Exactly.
long way to go. Well, thank you again so much, Tom, for your experience. I like to hear from your story experience, and it's really inspired. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'll see you next week, and I'll do the Chinese version later today.
Okay. See you
Thank
next
you
week.
so much.
Take care.
See you next week. Thank you.